A few months ago, a reporter from BuzzFeed got in touch with me and asked if I would talk to them about an investigation they were doing on the physicist Lawrence Krauss. I get these sort of things from time to time because occasionally the real world wants a peek at what's happening in the atheist and skeptic communities. I try to be helpful, but I do have to admit that over the past 10 years, I've become less and less interested in talking generally about sexism in these communities because I feel like I've said everything I need to say. Nothing is ever going to change, and talking about it constantly bores me. I did agree in this case, though, because it was a specific investigation on someone I've always known to be extremely shady, and they seemed interested in doing a really thorough accounting of his actions, which thus far hadn't really seen the light of day. So I talked to the reporter on the phone for an hour or so, giving him absolutely everything I had and offering up every contact I had so that he could follow up with the people who are more directly affected. When the story didn't appear after several weeks, I assumed it was dead. Then the reporter got in touch with me just before the end of 2017 to say that the post was right about to be published. And then when many more weeks went by, I have to admit, I just forgot about it. Honestly, things like this rarely see the light of day. People with a modicum of fame who abuse and harass women for years, they know how to control the public discourse. And Krauss had allegedly already threatened to sue a blogger who posted about his sexual harassment allegations, so to the point where she removed the post, and so the general public and Krauss fans never really caught on to what was happening. So much of that harassment happens in private hotel rooms and under bar tables and in empty cruise ship corridors. So if a person is particularly litigious, they can shut down claims of abuse just by pointing out that the victims don't have hard evidence and that they probably don't want to deal with a defamation lawsuit, which can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars that they might not get back even if they win. And of course, once a victim goes public, there's the inevitable avalanche of male supremacists and others who come down on them with seemingly limitless threats and insults. For a lot of victims, it's just not worth it, particularly for any action less than, out and out rape. He groped me at a bar. It was disgusting. It made me feel violated, but no one's going to believe me, and I'm just going to get a lot of trouble for it, so why go public about it? I'll just warn all my girlfriends to stay away from him. And so that's what happened with Krauss. And publications know that they will also face the inevitable lawsuit claims. So if they can't verify every detail and if they don't have the money to keep good lawyers on retainer, it's not worth it. So the story usually ends up getting killed. So that's what I assumed happened. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear from BuzzFeed again last week, in which they were just verifying a few things with me and telling me that the post would be up the next day. And I was doubly surprised when it actually was up on time, as promised. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. Links, as usual, below on my Patreon. It's painstakingly researched, and it includes the testimonies of many women, all independent of one another, reporting the same kind of sexual harassment from Lawrence Krauss over and over and over again, all over the world. Despite how well-researched it is, of course there are people falling over themselves to defend Lawrence Krauss. These people have taken Occam's razor and thrown it in the garbage because they think it's more likely that all of these separate independent women decided independently of one another to lie about Lawrence Krauss sexually harassing and assaulting them rather than just believing that Krauss did it. They even apparently dismissed the photographic evidence in which Krauss has his hand over a woman's breast. Krauss's amazing explanation for this is that he was actually putting his hand up to stop the photo from being taken with flash. Because that's what you do. When someone takes a photo of you, you assume that there's going to be a flash, and to combat that, you put your hand over the breast of the nearest woman. One of the people defending Krauss in the face of all logic and reason is his current wife, Nancy Dahl. And of course, if my husband were accused of sexual harassment, I too would want to defend him. But if my husband was accused of sexual harassment by dozens of people around the world, and if at least One of the instances happened right in front of me when he clumsily propositioned a fan on an expensive cruise to try to get her to do a threesome. I might not start tweeting my support, tweeting for the first time ever to support him. And if I did start tweeting my support despite all of that, I certainly wouldn't do it under my maiden name with absolutely no mention of my connection to my husband anywhere to seem like a disinterested third party. And if I did do that, I wouldn't start off by tweeting insults at the women who spoke up about my husband's abuse, like, I don't know, telling them they're too stupid to use birth control. And if I did do that, I wouldn't go on to threaten to tell other women's employers that they said something I didn't like on Twitter, which, to be specific, was that accusations of misconduct don't violate actual due process. And even if I did do all that, at the end of the day, I definitely wouldn't try to start a super cringy hashtag thanking my husband, which is only then used by me and 2 people from his fan club. It's all incredibly cringy. And to be perfectly real for a moment, no, you don't need to stick by someone whose abuses have been so clearly and carefully documented and reported. I know it sucks to realize that you're married to a monster, but that doesn't mean you have to stay. And it certainly doesn't mean that you have to join him in harassing women to shut them up. So all of that aside, I'm really happy that this article is out there. I've known about the cruise situation for a long time, in which Lawrence Krauss propositioned a woman for a threesome, made her feel extremely uncomfortable to the point that she said she would never attend another of his events. I'm glad that his behavior is out there, but even more importantly, I'm glad that the behavior of Ron Lindsay, who ran the Center for Inquiry at the time, is out there. Lindsay was told about the incident. He called the woman up, heard it directly from her, and then he decided to go ahead and book Krauss on another cruise. And on BuzzFeed, you can read the email in which an employee asked him, please don't book Krauss after he did this. And he says that he's going to go ahead and book him unless doing so would be a bad financial decision. Because that's what it's about for most of these big skeptic and atheist organizations. It's about selling tickets. It's about this fleeting fame and money, and it's gross. So one woman isn't going to book the next cruise, but they figure a dozen other hapless women will. So it's simple math. Well, hopefully this article and the fallout convinces the majority of people to boycott organizations like Center for Inquiry. Lindsay is no longer there, but it is now run by Richard Dawkins, who's best friends with Lawrence Krauss. It's not going to get better until these organizations fail and we build up new, better ones in their place. And while we're at it, let's get some better speakers who maybe don't grope and proposition conference attendees.